Hello people of the internet, my name is JD Shadow. I had just got done watching the Dark Side of the Ring, the plane ride from hell, and the reason why I'm going to give my 2 cents about this is because I've been seeing a lot of the wrestling vlogosphere has been talking about it, and I wanted to get my own recollection of what I heard and what I have been hearing that was going on at that point in time, and I want to give my thoughts about it. Before I go any further, if you like this content, if you like what you hear, please go subscribe for more geek gaming culture. Please subscribe. I am going to try to do some major things coming up on my channel that has to do with trying to move some stuff around to separate channels so the YouTube algorithm does not screw around with the channel. And again, there's going to be a lot more details about that in the coming days, assuming that I get around to it or I feel up to it, because it's been a hectic couple of weeks, to be quite honest with you. Also, keep in mind that this is going to be kind of heavy topics, and I might have some viewpoints about this that are not going to be very popular. Doesn't mean that I am condoning anything or condemning anything. I'm just saying that I want to take my own perspective about things, and I want to perhaps do some devil's advocate stuff, and I want to be free to do that sort of stuff because I feel as though the majority of the YouTube wrestling vlogosphere right now are on the side of the flight attendant, Heidi, the flight attendant, and her recollection. And that has something to do with how we have structured within the past 10 or so years about how we perceive victim stories. And that's really good that we take victim stories seriously, but we also have to apply due process. I also feel as though if we're going to take things seriously, we have to take both sides into account. And because of that, I want to delve into this in a way that kind of slows the whole narrative down a little bit before we get too crazy and think that the entire wrestling vlogosphere has gone into the wrong kind of woke. And before you guys get all crazy and start keyboard warrioring stuff, let me explain what's going on here. First of all, let's get to the TLDR of this. After the Introduction 2002 pay-per-view, they were coming back to American soil. The WWE chartered this flight, and on this flight, a lot of absolutely abhorrent things happen. Now, the WWE have tried to make light of this whole situation using some animated features, animated shorts in order to explain what happened, but in a more lighthearted way. The way that this special had portrayed it was in a much more serious light. Now, a full disclosure before we go any further. This is Dark Side of the Ring. I have criticized this particular series before in my fear that they were going to do a hit piece on the Ultimate Warrior because everybody wants to cancel him for something they gave him about some years ago. They obviously didn't really go into that frame of mind, but it was a fear that there was something more nefarious going on and trying to pour salt over old wounds that we thought we had closed in 2014. Also, keep in mind, this is a Vice produced special. These are Vice produced specials. This is our Vice produced series, and let's just say I don't have a great opinion on Vice. I had covered the issue that the 8chan owner had, and regardless of what you think about the 8chan owner or 8chan in and of itself, the way that Vice and those two people conducted themselves in order to get some kind of information for something that there's a lot more nuance in there than what people have come to believe about that was also pretty abhorrent and should have never happened. That you can do journalistic investigative work without resorting to some abhorrent behavior in order to get whatever information you're trying to get. So I feel as though it would only be fair if I disclose that sort of thing. Disclose my sort of bias with Vice, because I have seen that they don't exactly play their hand well in getting this investigative journalism there. Also, keep in mind that they're pretty progressive, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to specify that. There's nothing wrong with that. I consider myself progressive. I'm more of a politically fluid person anymore because there's a lot of stuff on all sides that I kind of agree with, and other things I think are absolutely abhorrent, and I'm going to use that word a lot, so bear with me. But anyway, back to this. The gist of it is that during the flight, they got delayed, and during that whole thing, they had way too much to drink. That's probably a cliche thing. And we talk a lot about the H-bombing, the drugs that were associated as well, and those are never a good cocktail to have, and it leads to a whole bunch of ribbing, a whole bunch of very bad stuff that is allege it to have happened. I use the word alleged because there's a few things that they said that people have denied, and we'll go through this one by one. First of all, the Scott Hall thing, I want to say maybe he generally doesn't have any recollection of those events, and he was said, you know what, I was drunk, I probably got H-bombed doing that, someone probably had Mickey'd me or something like that. He has no recollection of those events and seeing what he was like back in those days. You know what, I might be inclined to believe him about that. Now, did that mean that he apologized to her? I don't know. I don't want to make that assumption. I don't want to make that assumption one way or the other. However, he had said that he was in a bad state at that point in time, and usually when you're in those sort of states, you do things that you probably will regret, and probably things that he doesn't even remember he did. So, doesn't make it right. It just means that maybe I believe him in the sense that he doesn't remember any of that. And it's pretty hard to say, hey, I'm sorry, if you don't even know you did it. Maybe if you say, you know what, if I did anything, I apologize, and we don't know what happened there. She didn't specify one way or the other. She just specified the actual event. The thing about the Lesnar and Kurt Hennig fight, okay, those are stupid things to do, as well as the ribbing with Michael Hayes, although we all know Michael Hayes has the capacity to be a utter dick. However, his thing with JBL obviously kinda got resolved because they did do that special on the WWE Network where JBL and Michael Hayes had an interview with each other, so apparently whatever happened there got smoothed out. Of course, they did say that they reached out to Brock Lesnar about the whole thing that Terry Runnels has said, and they didn't get a call back, but that does not happen on the plane. That happens during an event. That happens during her doing interviews, I think, for the pay-per-view at that point in time, so that does not happen there. So that's the only reason why I'm not really specifying it here about the planes, because it didn't happen on the plane. It didn't really happen there. Doesn't make it right. But there's another reason I want to touch upon that is because of what we're about to get into, which was two biggest things that was featured on this thing that a lot of people are going to right now, which is the Ric Flair situation and Tommy Dreamer's recollection of it. So in the animated features, the animated shorts, which I hear Peacock took down after this whole thing came out, was Ric Flair had a robe on and he had nothing on underneath of it. So he exposed himself and does the helicopter thing. Helicopter move, we probably know what that is. That is a part of the animated features. We have heard about that before. What we haven't heard was Heidi's recollection of it, because it goes further than this. What she alleges here is that Ric Flair pins her to, I think it's the galley. I would have to watch it again in order to get the complete detail of this, and asks her to touch it. We should know what it means, and then he kind of forces her to do so. And it's only when Dustin Runnels decides to get on the microphone, which he was, by the way, singing during the flight when everybody else is trying to fall asleep. It's only when he gets on the mic or something like that and tells Ric Flair, hey, maybe you need to back off, that he finally does so. And that is making a lot of people look at Ric Flair a whole different light. Now, what Tommy Dreamer is saying, because here's where it gets a little interesting. He, for the majority of this special, is corroborating a lot of these stories that everybody is saying in the special. By the way, Ric Flair was not to be seen in the special. They talk about him, but apparently Vice didn't reach out to him for any comment about any of this stuff. I wonder what's going on there. And keep in mind, I'm not really the biggest Ric Flair fan. I like his work. I think he's a legend. I think he has done a lot of good stuff for the business, but also have heard about some stories about him and that he can be an utter douchebag too. So I'm not saying that I have high opinions about him in any sort of way. That having been said, however, I want to be fair about everybody. I want to be fair to this. Tommy Dreamer, is corroborating everything about these stories. Then it gets to Ric Flair, and this is where a lot of people want to cancel Tommy Dreamer right now, is because he, first of all, says it's Ric Flair being Ric Flair. Now, he doesn't exactly say this. He says that Ric Flair would not try to force himself sexually on anybody else. That he knows the character of Ric Flair and he would never do something like that. Now, if you go on to some other videos that are talking about this, they full cloth believe Heidi's story. And there's no reason to doubt her story. There's really no reason to. What Tommy Dreamer is getting in trouble about is that he's saying, oh, this is Ric Flair just joking around and stuff like that. And that's not a really good look. That's not a really good thing to say when you're dealing with what could be called sexual assault. You can go to jail for that for a long time. So that's not something you need to make light about. That is to be taken extremely seriously. Now, what I got out of this is that he's trying to say that Ric Flair did not commit to those acts, was not trying to force himself upon her. I think in the way that phrasing is a little different from what other people were saying about it, that he said, oh, this is Ric Flair being Ric Flair. I think he's trying to say that Ric Flair did not commit to those acts. And there was a note on the special that said Ric Flair has repeatedly denied these allegations. So he more or less knows that these allegations are out there. But was it the first time that we were hearing about it? Now, the other big thing that I have heard, at least Stephen Larson say, was that they took offense that Tommy Dreamer said, oh, she should have gone to the cops. And they took offense to that because we kind of know some of the ways the cops kind of deal with stuff like this, and that they just laugh it off or they don't take it seriously and stuff like that. Of course, we always got to do due process. We always want to make sure that we are fair to all parties and we come to a conclusion of evidence and corroboration, because there have been times when we got it wrong and it cost a man his career or livelihood or life. So we want to make sure we get it correct. We want to make sure that this is what we say it is, because this is borderlining on sexual assault. That is the big thing here. But Stephen Larson got it completely wrong. What Tommy Dreamer actually said was about her filing a lawsuit and her accepting a settlement. What he actually said was, if this was something that really bothered her, then she should have not accepted a settlement and should have gone on all the way.
If that's how she felt, maybe she should have not taken a payout and went to the fullest extent of the law to then truly put this heinous person in jail. My opinion.
Because at that point, if you were to go all the way, then it would go to the criminal statute. It could go on to for being in jail. Maybe the statute of limitations is out at this point. Maybe because she only accepted a settlement for what occurred. That, and I'm not a lawyer or any sort of regard, so I'm just anecdoting here. Then her ability to take it a step further and go into a criminal suit and having a trial of a jury of their peers, that's out the window now. And the reason behind that is because you've already said that, hey, they committed some sort of crime, and yeah, I have admitted to some things enough to give you some money about it. And I'm looking on the sites, I'm looking on the Reddits, freaking hell Reddit, and all of these blogs that are saying, oh, Tommy Dreamer just did himself in, he put the nails in the coffin. I don't think he necessarily did that. Doesn't look good, but I think it's coming from somebody who generally does think that Ric Flair is someone who would not commit to those acts, or is not the type of person that would try to force himself into somebody. And keep in mind that he was corroborating a lot of other things and about the drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. So what I would have liked to have seen is maybe more of that interview that he was doing for Vice. Maybe have Ric Flair come on and try to defend himself. There was no indication by Vice that he was contacted to try to get his side of the story. And he did try to preempt Ric Flair is about this whole thing, saying, hey, I have my own story about this. So it's sort of complicated in the way that this is presented. And remember, my opinion about Vice is not really that high in terms of whether or not they're doing legitimate and honest reporting of it. This is one of those things where I would like to see maybe more effort in a lot of these other blogs in order to get the full story before they go and say what they believe and don't believe. And this is also something that I would like to see more of a lawyer look into these things and maybe do their own video about it, because I would love to hear what maybe an attorney's opinion about that would be, about what Tommy Dreamer had said. That was one of those things where I was like, you know what, maybe he has a point there. Maybe it's a point that we didn't want to hear, because we're all thinking, okay, if you go to an authority figure that could be somebody that could take care of this in a more criminal right, would she have gotten it being taken seriously at that point? It's not, oh, she should have gone to the cops. He didn't say that. He did not say that. He said if she had thought this was worthy of pursuing, then she shouldn't have taken the settlement. She should have gone all the way, because then you end up going to a more criminal suit. It would have a lot more attention to it. That's what I got out of it. Now, you guys may be thinking a little bit different. I would love to hear your comments about that. Also, what some other people got wrong and what Culture and Cultaholic probably got wrong was that WWE filed an NDA. Not. It was the company that owned on the plane. I don't remember the name of the company. It was Sports something. I don't remember exactly the name of it. But from what I got out of that was that the WWE chartered this plane. They contracted these people and they were the ones to say, don't go public with this. Now, that is the fault of the company that owns that plane. It has nothing to do with WWE. Now, if the WWE owns that company, then they are at fault. They are culpable. But we don't have any indication one way or the other, and I would love to hear whether or not they did own that company or not. But I heard a lot of people saying that the WWE filed an NDA. They didn't do that. The other thing is that it was her husband that said, you know what, for the sake of our children and stuff like that, don't pursue this any further than the money. That was what she was saying in that special. And I want to go back to the Tommy Dreamer thing for just a second, because a lot of people are going after Tommy Dreamer for this. But during the Terry Reynolds and the Brock Lesnar explanation, Jim Ross, who was also on this special, he says could have happened. Maybe, maybe not. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. I can't be responsible for every single person. I can't be there for every single time someone does something wrong. And remember, Jim Ross's quality has gone down in recent years. And plus, Jim Ross on the Grilling JR podcast with Conrad Thompson, who, by the way, is Ric Flair's son-in-law. So that will be quite interesting to hear how he responds to this. Jim Ross comes out as kind of bitter. Like every single time that he answers a question, it seems as though he wants to complain about what people think about the wrestling business now and about some of these incidents and situations that happen. It just seems like he has nothing nice to say about the modern day fan base. And every time I hear him on AEW, I cringe a little bit. I feel as though Tony Schiavone should do the broadcast solo with whoever else they have, because JR seems though he's long past his prime, even though he thinks he still has it. I don't know why people still think he does, but that's just my opinion. He said that about the Terry and Brock situation, yet is no one going to talk about that? Is no one going to say anything about what he believes may or may not have happened? They're going to go after Tommy Dreamer. Let's go after JR as well if we're going to do that. So I don't think that Tommy Dreamer was trying to say that what Ric Flair was accused of doing was okay. He's saying that Ric Flair probably didn't do it. That Ric Flair did not force himself on her. And maybe he really didn't see anything. Maybe he couldn't corroborate that. Maybe he just heard about that. That's why I believe maybe we should hear the whole interview. Why would he do that? Why would he corroborate everything else in that special, or at least everything in that special that they showed that they were talking to him about it, and then suddenly they go to the Ric Flair thing and he's kind of doubting himself, and then he says we get easily offended that what we thought was okay then, we are suddenly condemning them as if we always had condemned them and did something about them. And that is not the case. No, we should not condone those acts. Yes, we should condemn those acts. But we also laughed at those animated shorts about this plane ride from hell. Yes, we also saw that as something as little more than comedic, lighthearted jabs. Name me one person who, before this special even aired, that they thought this was a lot more serious than what it was before the special aired. Name me that one person, because I sure as hell don't think they actually were thinking this was a lot more serious. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't give anybody due process or their chance to respond to the allegation. To be fair, Vice did say that they reached out to Brock Lesnar for comment, but he refused to respond, or that they didn't get any kind of answer. But like I said, given how Vice had tried to get some information out of the 8chan owner, I don't know if how they tried to get any comment from Brock Lesnar would have been moral or not. And I know a lot of people are not going to like me saying this, but let's keep the time gap in mind. This was something that happened 20 years ago. If it wasn't for the issues with Ric Flair, which borderlines into a sexual assault claim, then you run into things that were incidents of people behaving bad, though those were things that were a bit easier to heal from than maybe a sexual assault allegation. However, it's that one that is being contested right now, and I do feel is being contested. Keep in mind that unless we were both there on that flight, on that night, then we cannot corroborate one way or the other about these stories that were being told. I would love to hear Ric Flair's response, and as of recording this video, he has not responded to it yet as far as I'm aware. Maybe he has somewhere that I have not seen it yet. If so, please go ahead and comment down below about what he had said and where we can find it so we can get our own interpretations of it. Bottom line is this, is that first things first, we need to be honest about what people said or didn't say in this special. We need to take who did the special into account. Remember, vices come under question into how they get comments from people who would rather not give them. No, Tommy Dreamer did not say for the flight attendant to go to the cops. He asked whether or not she should have gone all the way and not just settled if there was something more serious, because she would have lost her ability to go further had she had just settled what she did. It was her husband that told her to take the settlement, and it was the people who owned the plane that told her to keep it under wraps, not the WWE. We are not doing ourselves any favors, Steven Larson or Cultaholic or What Culture or Brian Zane or r/Square Circle, to be that dishonest about something that we have all seen for ourselves and can make our own interpretations. Just because you're trying to make the YouTube gods happy, have a spine. Don't worry about what YouTube thinks of you. Don't worry about pissing off YouTube, because pissing off YouTube is doing the right thing. If you are honest about your feelings concerning the behavior of men against women from the speaking out hashtag, then you should say that. But if you're just doing it because you are scared that YouTube might demonetize you if you say something on the opposite end, then you are doing a disservice to not only yourself but to your viewership and to your fan base, and you should be ashamed of yourself for doing so. And you are not devaluing a victim's story by doing that. You are just saying, hey, let's have due process and let's make sure we get it right, because it would value all women and all victims of this kind of treachery and this kind of abhorrent nature if we get these stories right, instead of trying to just treat an allegation as a conviction. I do want to see Ric Flair's response. I do want to see if Lesnar would respond to this. I would like to see that full interview uncut of what Tommy Dreamer actually said. And I would like to see what a person who is experienced on a legal front, maybe a lawyer, an attorney, or someone like that, who might go in more into detail about whether or not what Tommy Dreamer said was accurate or not. That is something that I am generally curious about. I would love to hear what somebody would advise Heidi to do in that situation. Would you want her to settle? Would you have wanted her to settle in order to get herself out of stress or out of that sort of situation to put it behind her? Or could she have pursued that further? Would she want to pursue it further? Should she pursue that further? Would you have said the same thing if maybe somebody at Hogue Law or somebody that would make this be lawyered could actually provide that sort of information? Maybe some sort of third party could provide that sort of information, and would that be worth pursuing? Or was a settlement good for her to pursue and to take? If you are a lawyer and you are interested in telling me what you, as somebody who is trying to advise her what to lawfully do, not just in your own opinion, but in the opinion of somebody who is trying to apply the law to all of this, to leave a comment down below, because I would love to see that conversation take place. Would you think she would have more of a case? Would she have won a criminal bout? Would she have won if she didn't accept just a settlement, but the entirety of what she was asking for on a monetary status? If she wasn't interested in pursuing it on a criminal front, maybe she would have been able to win the entirety of what she was asking financially. And also, I'd like to hear your thoughts about what I said as well, as far as this special is concerned. Do you think Ric Flair was doing what Heidi claimed to have done? Do you believe Heidi? Do you believe what Tommy Dreamer has said? Do you think Tommy Dreamer should be canceled? Do you think Ric Flair's status in AEW is in jeopardy now? Do you also think that Heidi should have pursued this further? That's also something that I actually do think is a good conversation. That is something I'm generally interested in hearing your thoughts. Until next time, my name is JD Shadow. That just happened.